Not till we start the show. When I introduce you, then you can make all the noise you want.
Okay.
Because if I turn the microphone off, I'll probably forget to turn it back on.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, keep still.
Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And for those who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And please don't forget to give the show a like. And tonight I have an awesome guest. Let me show you. Hold on for a second. Okay, my guest tonight is Jack Von Bronsnake. Now, Bronsnake is his entertainment name, but I've known Jack for many years. And one night, he sent me an email. And he said, Noreen, I'm writing a novel here, but I want to tell you my story. And it was like reading a novel. It was like, I couldn't even print it out. If I had printed out, I could have published a book with it. It was so long, and he went into every detail. It's absolutely amazing. Now, I don't know, tonight I'm hoping Jack will do this chronologically because he's had so many experiences. But let me tell you a little bit about Jack. So his name is Jack Von Bronsnake. He was born in 1962 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Married with one daughter, 3 boys, and a little girl whom he and his wife raised after her mother died from cancer. He was a lead vocalist, a writer in rock bands for about 25 years. Jack said that a lot of people in that business are into occult and witchcraft, which I'm going to ask him about that tonight. After joining a few metal bands, Jack felt he was in serious danger from dark entities, and these entities did make themselves known to him. Jack became addicted to hard drugs. One day he made a decision to wean himself off of these drugs, and again he experienced paranormal events, and he will talk about that. After Jack and his 3 sons built their current house about 15 years ago. And the family had experiences starting from their last house to their current home. Jack was tormented as a child and petrified each night for months during one haunting that started after his grandfather's funeral. Jack's first paranormal experience happened at the age of 4 and continues to this day. Jack and his wife seem to be the main targets and have had witnessed together paranormal events. So with that, let me bring Jack on. Hold on for a minute. Let me bring him on. There we go. Hey, Jack. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Noreen. How's it going?
Oh, great. And, thank you for sending that email to me, because I've known you for many years, and I had absolutely no idea, because you never told that to me before until recently. And actually, you went into so much detail in your email, and sometimes it's kind of hard to express those events on a live show, but do the best you can. So I want you to tell the viewers your story, and try, if you can, to keep it in chronological order, okay? And Jack, he did send me some images, and we'll use those. And if you want, you can tell me, well, hey, Noreen, show that picture, but I'll try and do it while you're talking. So, Jack, go ahead and tell your story, honey.
Okay. First of all, what a thrill to be speaking with you on your show right now. You know I love you, right? And I never imagined that I'd be here, because I've seen probably every one of your shows, and they're all awesome. To start out with, I do go into a lot of detail. I always do that, no matter what I'm doing. I just have to have every little detail going. I understand it makes it a little hard to follow. But at 4 years old, and I didn't give you this particular story, but it was Christmas time, and my father had taken me to his work. They threw a Christmas party for the kids, and I went there, and there was kids running around. I wore myself out, and everybody got a present. And so when I went home, I wanted a pickup truck, or not a pickup, a dump truck. And I've been asking for one, and of course that's what it was. So I guess my dad had told him that to get that for me. So I went upstairs to play with it, and it was dark outside. There was a lot of snow out at the time too, but it was a few days before Christmas, and I tired myself out. I've been upstairs on the top in the hallway with this truck, and I'd already been running around at this Christmas party, so I was wore out. So I just went into my parents' bedroom, and I got on their bed, and I fell asleep. I don't know how long I was sleeping, but I opened my eyes, and I was looking down at myself laying on the bed, like my back was at the ceiling. I was looking down at myself. And at 4 years old, you have no reference to put that into any kind of perspective. So it didn't scare me. It didn't startle me. I just really didn't comprehend what was going on until years later. Then I realized, well, that was something amazing. Now, I don't know whether that started some kind of a chain where some spirit got in when I was out or whatever happened. But after that happened, I've been experiencing a lifetime of various, I guess you call them hauntings and things like that. So I'm not sure if that's what happened there. I'm not really sure why that happened. I know people call it out of body, but I was only 4 years old, so I had no concept that was out of the ordinary or anything. I never even told my parents about it, and quickly forgot about it until years later. But so my grandfather, my parents were born in England, and my father was a World War II veteran. He served on a carrier, HMS Illustrious, during the war, and that ship took a beating. I think it had sort of like a record throughout the war of a ship taking the most torpedo hits and dive bomber hits without sinking. So when you consider that you're in basically a huge soup can, and you've got nowhere to go, and they developed time bombs, so the bombs could hit through multiple decks and explode on whatever deck the enemy wants to blow up. And so you can imagine the carnage and the mayhem when the bomb drops down to like 3 or 4 levels and blows up. And so you still have to do your job with your brothers spread all over you. It's horrific. So after the war, they moved to Canada. Their country was devastated. There was no work there, so they immigrated. And my grandparents didn't come over right away. They waited a couple of years. And by the time, I was born in 62, and I think when they moved in, I was probably right around that 4 years old when that thing happened with the out-of-body thing. And so my grandmother and grandfather moved in with us. I very quickly became my grandfather's favorite. I was the youngest, so probably that had a lot to do with it. But he was a teaser, right? Like he would just tease the crap out of you, and sometimes till you were in tears. But he never meant to cause harm or anything, but he just was relentless. And so after a while, I sort of got used to that, but I would tell him off. Whereas the other kids were a little older, they didn't want to tell him off. And so he told my mom that he really liked that about me, that I wasn't afraid to express my anger or whatever and tell him to stop. So we developed a good friendship, really, really close. Like I love him dearly. I miss him. I still miss him. And he is a short guy. He's like 5'3", and but he was really courageous. He was a policeman in England. He was I forget what they call him now, like a National Home Guard during the wars. And he brought with him, when they moved in, he had these 2 giant suitcases. And I was always curious as to what was in there, because they were there for months and months on end. And so it wasn't clothes or anything. So I was always curious. And he caught me in his room a few times trying to get into those and, shuffle me out of there. So eventually, my brother and I were on the front porch one day. It was a sunny day. Again, I was about 4. My brother was 5 years older. And my grandfather came to the porch with both of those suitcases. And so he put them on the floor and he gave us a little talk about, I'm going to give you what's in this suitcase, so you're both going to share it, but I don't want you to damage it. You have to play with it nicely and all things like that. And so he opened it. It was just full of die-cast cars, like Hot Wheels, but there was no Hot Wheels at the time. The Corgis and Dinkies, they were full. There was a few hundred cars in there. And so he split them between my brother and I. And I got a real love for collecting. And I ended up, in my adult years, collecting. And I had over 5,000 at one time. So we became very close like that. When my grandmother, we were all sitting the family was over, like my aunt and uncle were over and my cousins were over. And we were in the family room just visiting my grandparents because my aunt and uncle lived just down the road. So they came over and they were visiting. And my grandmother had ulcers. And so she asked my sister, my sister asked her actually if she could shake her medicine. It was kind of like a Pepto-Bismol type thing. It wasn't a pill or something like that. And so she said, yeah, go ahead. And as she was shaking it, if anybody has a weak stomach, you might want to mute the mic right now. As she was shaking it, my grandmother sat forward a bit, and a huge stream of blood came out of her mouth. Like, it was huge. And it was pure blood. And I was all the kids were all stunned, terrified. I mean, it was like a nightmare. So we got shuttled outside by the adults pretty quickly, and I guess they cleaned up, and an ambulance came by, and she went to the hospital. So about a week, I can't remember the exact length of time, it wasn't very long, a week, two at the most, 2 weeks later, my brother and I shared a bedroom at the back of the house, and my parents' bedroom was right beside ours going toward the front, and then my grandfather's and grandmother's was at the front of the house. And I heard my mom scream really loud. I'd never heard her scream or cry or anything. Like, she would cry, but like, someone passed away or something like that. But she wasn't like a crier or anything like that. And I heard her scream, and then she started crying. And then I heard my dad wake up, and they were having a conversation. And my brother and I were just intently listening to try to figure out, is she hurt somehow? We weren't, really sure what was going on. So we sort of went back to sleep, not totally asleep yet, when the phone rang. And this is it was early in the morning, maybe 4 in the morning. I'm just guessing, but it was early in the morning. And my dad got up and he went downstairs and answered the phone. And then he came back up and he went into his bedroom. And then I heard my mom really, really crying. She was sobbing and really, really upset. The phone call was the hospital calling that my grandmother, my mom's mom, had passed away. And so what happened with my mom prior to that phone call, why she screamed, she told me years later when I was old enough to comprehend it. She was in bed, and by the way, my mom was a little English lady born in England. She never even exaggerated. She certainly didn't tell stories and lies. And so I completely believed her. She said her mother, she was sleeping and she felt someone tugging on her foot and she thought it was my dad. And she opened her eyes and it was her mother standing at the foot of her bed or beside her bed and told her not to worry, she has to go, something to that. I can't remember the exact words my mom told me, but she had come to say goodbye is the gist of it. And that scared the hell out of my mother. And that's why she screamed, right? And then right after that, my dad woke up or whatever, then she was crying because she said this thing actually grabbed her foot and shook her foot physically. And she saw and it was like a full body, I guess you call it, apparition. Like you couldn't see through it, and there wasn't anything odd about it. She said it looked like her mom was actually standing there. Mm-hmm. And then she disappeared, and that's when she screamed, right? When she disappeared. And so that was like the first real sort of what you would call like a classic paranormal event that happened in my life, even though I wasn't directly involved with that. It was my mother that happened. So my mom explained to me, her aunt had died when they were still living in England. And in England, I guess at the time, I don't know if they still don't have funeral homes, but they didn't have them at the time. If you passed away, you would be set on a bed or a couch or something, a coffin even, in the house. And people would come and say goodbye that way. And so my mom's aunt had passed away. And the family was in the house, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, was telling her to kiss her goodbye. And my mom said, no, I can't do that. I'm not doing that. And my grandmother sort of be insistent about it. She wouldn't even touch her. She did not want anything to do with it. And so I don't know how much later this happened, maybe a month, or I can't really recall, Noreen. My mom passed away years ago. Otherwise, I could have called her and got the details. But sometime later, it was blackout in England because of the war. So there was no lights on at night. And she was walking from a friend's house, I think it was, and walking back home. And I think what she said was she heard her name, and she turned around, and it was her aunt. She said her aunt was in this white, like a gown that she was wearing when she was in wake at the house. And my mom, like, it terrified her, and she ran all the way home. Okay, so flash forward to my grandfather. I was about 12 years old. No, I was about 10 years old, and my grandfather passed away. And so at the wake, everybody was telling me, oh, you're so brave. I mean, we know this is hard on you, and you'll be okay. And they were commenting about how I wasn't crying or anything like that. Well, I wasn't a crier, right? My dad was a World War II vet. He raised us to be sturdy and strong. And to him, a man crying was weakness. He changed his mind. He changed over the years, but at that time it was like that. And so I went up with my mom to see my grandfather, and I didn't want to even be there. I didn't want to go there. And I just looked at him, and I mean, it was more like horrifying to me than it was scary, because it just, your body just doesn't look the same when your spirit's gone. And so my mother said to me, "Kiss him goodbye." And I said, "No way." And she goes, "No, you have to say goodbye. You have to say goodbye. Kiss him goodbye." And I refused. And she said, "Well, then just touch his hand and say goodbye." And I was like, "Mom, there's nobody in there. He's not there no more." And then she grabbed my hand and put it on my grandfather's hand. And that really surprised me, because I trusted my mom 100%. She never did anything like that before or after, and she regretted it too afterwards. But then I started like really crying heavy. Like I was sobbing and everything else. But it was more about the fact that my mom betrayed something than it was that I felt that cold, clammy hand. That also was scary, but it was more that my mother did that. I couldn't believe she did that. And so I started really crying and going crazy. And so my brother-in-law, Joe, this guy was awesome. They're 17 years older. He was 18 years older than me, and my sister's 17 years older. And so he offered to take me home and then take me fishing the next morning, and which he'd done many times. When my mom told me after the war, my father changed, like a lot of those veterans did, because they saw horrific things. And so he wasn't one, like he would drive me to my ice hockey games, but he wouldn't stay and watch. He would go right back home. So things like that, he didn't do with me. He certainly didn't take me fishing. He didn't fish. And so Joe filled that gap for me, my brother-in-law. He took me fishing all the time. He taught me how to fish. He taught me how to play guitar. He came to my hockey games. He was at the game. I broke a record for scoring for defensemen this one season, and we won the cup that season, and he was there. And so, I mean, I looked at him more as like a father to me rather than a brother-in-law, because he was so much older, and he was treating me like I was a son. And I still love him. I still love him dearly. And so I said, yeah, that's great. And so I calmed down, and we left early because they wanted to just get me out of there. And so we went to their house, and they had just bought the house a few months prior, and they were like semi-detached. So there was two houses connected all the way down the block, and the houses were about 120 years old at the time they bought it. I remember them saying that, and it was beautiful. Like there was, I think the ceilings had to be like 8 feet, maybe even higher. They were real high ceilings, Victorian style, and really nice like baseboards, and it was really atmospheric. I loved it. So when it was bedtime, the spare bedroom was at the top of a flight of stairs, and the flight of stairs, if you're going down the stairs, you would face the front door to walk out of the house. So it was pretty close to the front door. So I got into bed, shut the door, and tried to go to sleep. And I really couldn't sleep because I kept thinking about why my mom did that. It really upset me. And so I'm not sure how long that lasted, but I suddenly was struck with like just pure terror out of the blue for no reason. I was petrified, and I was shaking, and I was certain that my grandfather was going to come walking through the door. And that, for some reason, that popped into my mind, and it terrified me. And it was a feeling of, it's hard to explain what people mean. I've heard other people describe it too, like the feeling of the atmosphere changed to a wicked, evil state. It's hard, I mean, I can't really articulate it. It just felt wicked and evil, like the utmost darkness, like satanic. And I was just terrified. I couldn't move. I was actually frozen stiff. And then as I'm sitting there going through this, I hear a humongous bang. Like it sounded like a bomb went off. And that really shook me bad. Now I'm actually literally shaking now, because what was that? And then maybe 10, 15 seconds later, another huge bang. By this time, it had to be past midnight, maybe even toward 2 in the morning, somewhere in there, early. And it was so loud that I was surprised that my brother-in-law didn't wake up. I could hear him snoring, right? And then I was also surprised my sister didn't get up to see what was going on. And this banging went on every, maybe 10, 15 seconds, or the longest was probably like a minute, and all night long, bang, bang. And what it was I figured it was the front door opening and slamming shut to the house. And every time it banged, like if you would picture like someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger size grabbing a huge solid oak door, which is what it was, and with all this strength just slamming it shut. That's how much, that's how violent it was. Like the windows were shaking.
So this was directed to you, and no one else.
Yeah, it was at me for sure. And throughout the whole time this was happening, like I was absolutely petrified. I don't think I'd ever been that scared in my entire life. I didn't even imagine you could get that afraid. And I was trying to work out, what is this? I even lie to myself. Oh, it's this, it's that. And I know it's not. I'm trying to calm myself down, I guess. And that went on all night long. And it just absolutely terrified me. And so as soon as the sun started coming up, it actually rose. I guess back of the house was facing east, and it was coming up, and the room just started to light up a bit. It stopped. And that evil presence feeling went away also. I was still afraid, but I mean, I calmed down quite a lot when the light came in the house. And then maybe 15, 20 minutes later, the room was fully lit up. And so the fear was, no more fear, but I was still really shook up and confused. And
so when you left that house and you went home, did you experience anything?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So what happened was we went fishing. I didn't even ask Joe if he heard it, because I heard him snoring throughout the whole thing. He never woke up. And when we went back to the house, to their house, I asked my sister, did you hear the bang? And she said, yes, she did. But she was petrified also. She couldn't wake Joe up. He wouldn't wake up. And she was too afraid to get up and go see what it was. So she was going through the experience, but probably not on the same intensity as I was. And it absolutely was directed at me. I absolutely knew that for reasons unknown to me. I just knew it was directed at me.
Now, had you gone back? Okay, so this was at the brother-in-law's house.
Yeah, my sister's house. Yeah,
and at your sister's house, and then had you gone there again after that time, and did you experience anything in that house?
I did go back there maybe twice, and no, nothing. Nothing there. Just one more detail about that part of it, and then I'll get into what happened when I went home that night, because I think it's relevant. So the neighbors, when we were fishing, the neighbors that lived in the house next door, they were actually really good friends for years. And that's how they knew the house was up for sale, because their friends had lived in the house beside it, so they bought it. And they would go out all the time. They're around the same age. Well, they came knocking on the door the next morning when we were gone, and my sister answered it, and they were enraged. They wanted to know what the argument was, because they thought that my sister and Joe were fighting, and the door was slamming. That's what they thought. So they heard it too. And so they were really uneasy after that, finding out that it wasn't them. So that night I went home, and he drove me home, and I was so relieved, because you feel safe in your own home, in your own bedroom, you feel safe, and I was so relieved. And I didn't even tell my mother or dad about the experience, because I just thought they'd fluff it off, so I didn't bother. But that night, I'm in bed, and my mom bought me a captain's bed, and they're, if you don't know, they're about 3 feet high, and they got drawers under them. And so so that I was in bed there, and then I heard a strange noise coming from the foot of the bed, but it was down where I couldn't see it, like right below the footboard. And it sounded like if you took a green garbage bag and started rumpling it up like this. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like somebody was playing with plastic, like a plastic bag. But yeah, and so I was freaked out a lot because that made me think that whatever was at the house came to my house now. The room got that same intensity about it. Not as dark, but it got real scary. And that noise went on all night long. And I was petrified, and I couldn't even get up to look and see. And the next day, when I woke up, I looked around. There wasn't even a bag in the room at all. There was no bag. There's nothing there that could have made that noise. My door was shut all night, and we didn't even, I think we had dogs. Yeah, we had dogs, but they didn't sleep in my room. And so I was really confused. The house we had at the time had attic in the sides of the house rather than up in the ceiling because it was like an A-frame kind of roof. And so I even opened up that. You could pull out these drawers on wheels and looked in there to see if there was a bag in there. That's how freaked out I was. I had to find out what made that sound. I needed to make sense of it. And then I couldn't figure anything out. And so the next night it happened again. And it happened again the next night after that. And it went on for months. I was terrified every night when I went to bed. And this part I didn't tell you, but one night, my bed was, the headboard, my mom moved it to the middle of the room. It was against the wall. And she moved it to the middle of the room, and right behind me was my window, which faced the back of the house. And so one night, that sound starts up again, and I'm terrified again. And then I hear, it sounds like somebody tapping on the window. And I was so terrified, I didn't even want to look up with my eyes.
I would be too. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, I was screwed both ways.
You poor thing.
And so it kept tapping, and so finally I drugged up the courage and convinced myself it's probably a bird. And my dad had built a porch onto the back of the house, so there was probably from the bottom of my window down, it was probably 2.5 feet. And so I looked. You're just not going to believe what I'm going to tell you right now, but my word to God, this whole story is absolutely true. I am a Christian man, and I'm not lying. This is really true, the whole thing.
Okay.
I looked, and I saw, it looked like a coyote space, or a wolf, a small wolf, and it had a vest on, and it had a top hat thing on.
You looked out the window.
I did, and that's what I saw.
And was it in the window, or was it on when you looked? You had to look out, and it was on the ground.
It was on the porch roof because the house used to be. It would end up at the back window of my bedroom, and it was just straight down. So my dad put an addition on, maybe 15 feet by the length of the house, because he was a gardener, and he started plants and stuff in there, and he had tools in there. So he built this big addition. And so the roof, the bottom of the window frame, the root to the roof was maybe 2.5 feet. So if an adult was standing there, his head would probably be pretty close to the top of the window. But this thing here, its head was maybe from the sort of I saw a part of a vest. So it was probably down around where your belly is up. So whatever it was pretty short, maybe 4 feet at most.
Now, was it on 4 legs, or was it standing up on 2 legs?
It was standing up, and because its front paws were up like this.
Oh,
it was standing up, yeah. And that drove me so deep into fear that there's no way I could even articulate how that made me feel, because it was actually there. I actually saw it. Now, when it happened, this was months and months after this noise at the end of my bed was going on every night. So it was wintertime. And I knew that there was a layer of snow on that porch roof, and I was afraid to go look and see, because I wanted to convince myself it wasn't really there when I knew it was. But I didn't like the idea that was real, because I had to sleep in there again. And so I went and looked, and there was paw prints in the snow.
Oh my God!
My hand to God, there was paw prints in the snow. And we had an old, do you remember the old TV antennas? They were like steel frame towers that would go up beside your house.
Yeah.
Do you remember those?
Yeah.
And we had one of those on one side of this addition, and on the other side there was a tree. And so I looked, and when I saw the prints, it went. So it had to come up. It had to come up the antenna, because that's where the tracks came from and went back to. So this thing was real. It was literally real. It climbed up. It walked across the roof and looked and started tapping on my window as this paper bag thing was going on at my feet.
Oh my God.
And I mean, that does more than scare you. That changes your entire paradigm. Like, even as a child, you don't believe things like that are real. Children are afraid of monsters, really, but you can never really see anything, right? And so when I saw that, it just, like, now there's no rules. There's no rules now. Everything is possible now in my mind. And when someone says there's no such thing as ghosts or demons or whatever, no, there is. There absolutely is. And I don't know what that thing was. I think, personally, myself, I think it was demonic. That's what I think. And I actually think that all these ghosts and things like that are also demons. I think they're trying to trick people, and they're called familiar spirits, actually, in the Bible, because they look familiar. They'll appear to you as something you recognize. They have that ability, and they can look exactly like someone you know and love, or they can look like a stranger, or they can look like what they are, or hideous demonic monsters. And I guess depending on what their plan is, they show up as one thing or another. And this one showed up as it was either like a coyote. It looked like the size of a coyote, but it kind of had the color of a wolf, which is similar, but so I'm not sure what it was, but it was real. It was there. I saw the prints, and I did tell my dad about it that time. I told him because I had proof, and I said, "Come look at the." I told him the story, and I said, "Come look at the snow, the tracks in the snow." And he was like, "I'm busy." Because he didn't believe me. He thought it was. He told me later. He thought it was like maybe the tree branches had broken the wind and made marks or whatever. So I finally convinced him to come up, and he looked. And I've never seen my dad look shocked in my life. He was a sturdy, strong man. He was rock hard, physically huge, powerful of mind, kind, gentle, but he was speechless when he saw that. And I could see, as soon as he saw that, his eyes went wide for just a split second. Mm-hmm. And then I guess he realized I was looking at him, and he didn't want to scare me, so he very quickly pulled himself together. And he tried to convince me I was just a cat. And I said, "Well, Dad, look at the size of those paws. It's not a cat." Because the paw prints were large.
Wow.
But he just kept saying, "Well, there's big cats around here." And, years later, he told me he was just confused and didn't know what to make of it. And he just didn't want me to be afraid. So he tried to convince me it was a cat.
Did you ever see that again?
No, I never saw that
again. Just the one time?
Only that one, one time.
All right, so what happened in 1984 with you and your wife?
Okay, I'll skip ahead to that. So we had just been married maybe a month or something like that, not very long. And we were sleeping, and then I started having the most realistic, most horrific nightmare I've ever had in my entire life. It was just absolutely terrifying. And I remember a couple of details. I went to visit my neighbor next door, who was a childhood friend. Carolyn was her name. And I went to call on her, and a witch opened the door. And a real hideous-looking, scary witch chased me back to my house. And it was like I was running through water. I couldn't go. But that was just the one aspect I could remember. The dream was really intense. And it got so scary that I remember in the dream thinking, "This is a nightmare. Wake up, wake up." And with all my strength I could muster, I kept doing it. Wake up, wake up. And then finally I did wake up. And when I did, I shot up and straight up into a sitting position. Like I just wanted to get away, and I sat up. And to my surprise, at the exact same time, my wife also shot up like that into a sitting position. And when we looked right in front of our faces, maybe 6 inches, maybe 7, there was, it looked like smoke or mist, or like when I was in bands, we had dry ice. You've probably seen it on stage where looks like fog rolling in on a stage. Yeah, that's what it looked like. It had no real defined edges or anything. There was no right angles or anything like that. It was a blob of smoke, and it was maybe 2 feet high by maybe 1.5 feet wide, and it had depth to it. Like it wasn't flat; it had depth. And the outer edges were like a gray color, like a light gray. And as it progressed in toward the center, it went darker and darker and darker. And the middle was like almost black, but it was like dark, dark gray. And it was right in front of our faces. And that room had that same feeling of that I described earlier of evil and pure, vile evil. And this thing, I guess the impression I got was as soon as we sat up like that and we saw it, it took off. And it went really fast down toward the footboard. And then it made a right turn and it went to the wall. And then it went right up the wall and through the ceiling into the attic. And we had an attic that I was going to build a recording studio in. It was a big attic. And it went into the attic. And we were just terrified. And so I didn't want to, I asked my wife, what happened? Tell me what you saw. I didn't want to say, did you see this, and give her detail. I wanted to see if she saw the exact same thing as I did, and I didn't want to influence her. So I said, what did you see? What happened? She explained to me, not all at once right at that moment, but when we calmed down, we realized what happened. She was having the worst nightmare of her life also. And she realized she was dreaming. And she woke herself up too. And, Dawn, can you get that? Sorry. And she described the exact same thing I saw, this misty, cloudy thing. And so she saw the...
Oh no! I'm trying to get him back, everybody. I don't know what happened. YouTube took me off. Are you guys still there? Are you guys still there? Oh my God. Okay, I'm back up. Sorry, I got my stream stopped on YouTube. I'm trying to get Jack back. Hold on, guys. Oh my God, I don't know what happened. That's so weird. All of a sudden I looked down and they said I was disconnected. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can get him back. Hold on, guys. Hold on. All right, hold on. All right. Hold on. Jack.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Well, I think my internet went down because I lost you. And then my stream went down and I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. Anyway, we're back up.
Yeah, I don't know. I just cut off. I can't remember where was I in, Ryan?
Oh, the mist in the bedroom. The mist in the bedroom.
Right.
And what? And but I want to ask you about that.
Sure.
What house were you in? Because you said that your previous home, you had paranormal experiences as well as the one that you built 15 years ago. So was this the previous one?
This was, we moved from, I'm trying to remember.
This was in 84.
Okay, so this is when I got married. So we had this house here. We were renting it, and then we were going to buy it because I was going to build my studio. So this was a house that I had with my wife. It was our first house together.
Oops.
And it was an old Victorian house. So
Oh, so it's an old house as well.
Yeah, yeah. It was in a small town. Like I moved. That's when I moved out of Toronto. I was 19 when I moved north. Like my dad retired and they bought a business up north and they moved up north, so I went with them. And then I was into the music then, so I was doing live performances all over the place. That's where I met my wife. She met me at one of my performances, and so we started dating, and then we got married, and then we rented this house, and we were going to buy it. And
all right, so you were in the band at this particular time. Did you start the metal band when you met her, or before and then you met her? Oh, you met her at an event, right?
Yeah, we were at a club doing a performance where she met me. So when we first got married, I was still doing, I was in two bands. One band we were doing just classic rock from the 50s to the 70s, like Beatles, Wings, all that kind of stuff. And then the other one was what we used to call hard rock. There was no metal. Well, actually, there was metal, but this band was called hard rock because we're doing the early rock songs. They're getting a little heavier, like Black Sabbath, stuff like that. Uriah Heep, all these old bands, Rainbow, things like that. Right. And then, so not too long after we were married, I got into metal. So probably within a year. I might have even just been starting it by the time that happened.
Okay, I want to ask you, so when you started getting involved in these bands, you said that there was a lot of free drugs around, and a lot of them were into the occult and to witchcraft. Yes. Were you involved? Were you involved as well?
No, I didn't want anything to do with it. It was everywhere. Like even if you went we used a few different studios, and you would get engineers that were into that, and most of them were young women that were into it.
Into what? Into witchcraft? Into the occult?
Yep, the occult, witchcraft, satanic worship, you name it. Everything, all the dark things. And some of them think, like they would call it like white witchcraft. And I guess the idea there is it's not used for negative purposes, right? So some of them were like what they would call white. I guess it was Wiccan, which is a harmless thing. But other ones were into like casting spells. And these people, when they got angry or upset or they perceived some kind of a slight from somebody, they were relentless. Like they would go. I went with my friend who was dating one of them, or one of the guitar players was dating a young woman, a real beautiful young woman too. And she was a witch, and she was also into the occult. I think she was she was into satanic worship, but she didn't really articulate it in specific terms. But so one evening we were going out somewhere, downtown Toronto. I can't remember if we were going out for dinner or movie, something like that. But she took us to this shop that she got her stuff from, an occult shop, right downtown Toronto. And some of the businesses, I guess they're really, really old because they're very narrow. Like maybe 20 feet wide, but they're really long. They go really long, like lengthwise. And so we went into one of these buildings and went up the stairs, and on the top floor, there was all kinds of black candles, white candles, different color candles for different spells. There was like swords, herbs, all kinds of stuff like that. Books on the occult, different things that you can cast spells with, like actual voodoo dolls and pins. Anything occult you could think of, this place had it. And there was a lot of people there. Like they were busy. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that are into this stuff that will not divulge it to even their best friends. If they're into like the heavier stuff, they won't even tell their best friends. Mm-hmm. Well, if they're just,
And this is what? So they could get famous?
I don't think any of them were into trying to use their spells or whatever to get famous. I think they were using them more as how would you say it? More as like a weapon against what they perceive to be their enemies, like an offensive weapon, right? That's the only thing I saw. I didn't see anybody using this stuff for anything but negative things. I never saw anybody even try to get fame, like you're saying. Like, I know there's people that absolutely do that. I've seen stories about people that did that they gave their souls to Satan if he would let them become famous.
Yeah.
But I didn't see anybody doing any of that kind of thing. The people that I knew weren't doing that. They were just really dark, mean-hearted people, and they held grudges like you wouldn't believe. You could do the slightest little thing that they perceive as an insult or something, and they were on you. I mean, they were relentless.
Did they work? Did those spells and whatever it is that they did to other people, did it work on them?
I wasn't a witness to the effect of whoever they were casting spells on, and I didn't even know anybody that was having spells cast on them. But even so, if they were casting spells on, like, let's say myself or someone in the band, they wouldn't tell us anyway, so we wouldn't know. And one of these young women, I got into it was like it started out as a conversation, then it became a debate. And then she started getting really offensive and got really upset and mad and angry. And I tried to calm her down. Like, I'm just trying to find out how, what you do, what's involved. And she got all mad and upset because I was asking her questions like, how do you know your spells work? Like, what do? Do you just think they work, or you know they work? And she got real offended about that. Yeah. So did she put a spell on me or whatever? I have no idea. No idea. Maybe some of the stuff I experienced is based on being cursed. I don't know. I don't really know why. It all started really with my grandfather's death. It started there. But I had experiences before that, like that out-of-body thing I felt when I was 4. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered, when you're out of your body like that, can something else get in? Is it vacant? Did something get in?
Bring something back with you.
Or something to attach to you and follow you around.
And you know what? I think they can. I think you can.
Yeah, I believe that, sir. Totally.
Okay, so what happened then? You were involved. Now you were involved with these metal bands, and you said that there was drugs all around. Now you got involved with drugs.
Okay, you want me to tell that? Okay,
yeah.
So I was heavy in drugs. So the last band I was in was a metal band, and these guys, I mean, they were the best of the best. I would say we were the best metal band in Canada at the time, and that sounds arrogant, but I believe it to be true. These guys were so skilled. 2 guitar players I had, and a really best bass player I've ever heard, and a really good drummer and keyboard player. That was a great band. So I can't remember how long we were probably together like 4 years, and then we started getting interest from 2 major U.S. labels. They were interested. They wanted to talk to us, right? So we had set up a meeting. I forget, it was a few months down the road. We were going to fly to Montreal and meet one of them, and then meet another guy somewhere else. So we were getting interest like that, because I was actually ready to leave that band. I was just getting tired of having to drive I was living up north, and I had to drive like 60 miles to rehearsal and back again. I was kind of getting tired of that. But when you hear that there's a label interested, well, that just, I wanted to go real bad then. And so, I was getting into drugs. And I wasn't really... I wasn't what you would call like a drinker. Like, I would drink, but I didn't drink to get wrecked, but I was into the drugs. I never did a needle though, Noreen. I just refused to do needles, but I started doing heroin in capsules. It would come in a capsule. I didn't even know what it was the first time I had it, because I was at a party and someone just said, "Here, take this." And stupidly I took it. And then, heroin, people describe it as like the most awesome feeling of your life. And it starts out that way, but it's a trick, because after that, it's the worst feeling of your life. You're constantly trying to get that feeling again that you got the first, few times you took it. But you can't, and that's what they call chasing the dragon, but you're never going to catch it. And then that's how people get addicted, because they want to feel that feeling, so they keep going and going. And then they think, well, what I did was I thought, well, if I take more, if I take double. And so I would take double and it would work. And then I had to take triple for it to work, because your body becomes accustomed to it, right? Mm-hmm. You would still get really high, don't get me wrong, but not to this maximum level that every addict wants.
Well, what happened? You wanted to wean yourself off of these drugs.
Yeah.
And you had an experience. So tell the viewers about that.
Okay, so because we were going to meet this label, I knew I had to get clean, because once they saw me, you look at me and you would know I was a drug addict. And so I decided that I was going to go to a cottage, a family's property, in a secluded area in the country, like 130 miles away from Toronto, by myself. There's no electricity at the cottage, no cell. There's no cells back then anyway. And so I went there, and I brought enough drugs with me to last for like 30 days, a month, or maybe 2 if I stretched it. I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. And so when I got to the cottage, I hung my car keys up on a key hook where I always hang them, right beside the door you come in on. I hung them up there. And then I started, day after day trying to take less and less, but I was taking more and more. You get a little high, and then you lose track, and did I take one, and then I just took them, and they lasted maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks. And I brought like at least 30 days. It should have lasted 30 days, or I think maybe even 2 months. I can't recall exactly, but it was a long time. I took enough up that I was completely convinced I could wean myself off, and I didn't. I ended up taking them all. And then I knew I was going to be in big trouble, because withdrawal is going to start. And the nearest hospital is 2 hours drive away. And so I thought, but I better go now, because if I wait an hour from now, I won't be able to do anything. I'll be in, wrecked in worse shape than you can imagine. So I went to get my keys to drive to the. My keys were gone to drive to the hospital. My keys weren't on the hook anymore, and I hadn't used them not one time since I got there. I didn't go anywhere. There was nothing around for miles and miles and miles and miles. I was secluded on this a river in the middle of a huge, mega hectare area of forest, wild forest. There's nowhere to drive, so I didn't touch the keys. I know I didn't touch them. And when I saw they were missing, I got a little frantic, because I've been in withdrawal before, and it's just an unimaginable feeling that you cannot comprehend unless it's happened to you. And I knew I was going to be in serious, serious trouble, and I was. It ended up going that way. So I was searching everywhere frantically. I pulled out every drawer. I was opening books because my mind wasn't quite straight. I was opening books and things to look to see if I stuck them in there or something. And I just couldn't find them. I looked all outside everywhere. I couldn't find them. So I went in the house, and I started getting, the cottage, I started getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And then I realized it was getting so bad that I thought I was going to die. I thought my heart would quit. I was honestly resigned to the fact that I'm going to die here. And the only thing that entered my mind that it really tormented me was that by the time they find me, I'm going to be in real bad shape, right? Because your bodies don't, they rot, right? Let's be honest. And I was visualizing my family having to see that, and so that was just horrific. And so I got to a state where I thought, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. I even contemplated sticking a knife in my neck just to make it stop, killing myself. And I didn't want to commit suicide, but that's how bad this agony was. I couldn't take it. I had to end it. And I was getting desperate, and the knife was sounding better and better to me. Then I heard my name, and it shocked me, like my name, and it was clear and it was loud. It wasn't yelled. It wasn't like a holler or anything like that. It was just clear and loud and stern, strong. And I stopped, and sort of like it came from behind me. And so I'm wondering, there's nobody here. I know there's nobody here. I'm going through this in my mind. And then I start trying to convince myself, okay, I didn't hear it. I'm withdrawing and I'm freaking out, right? And then as I'm thinking that, I hear my name again. Only the second time I heard it, I knew exactly who it was. It was Jesus. And at that time, I wanted nothing to do with that guy. I didn't want anything to do with him. I was in a band. We were about to sign a deal potentially. I don't know if we would have or not, but at least it was on the table, right? And so, there was drugs, there was booze, and there was all kinds of women and things like that. And that's everybody knows that's what goes on when you're in a band like that. That's what happens, right? It's not a secret. And we'd go backstage, and it'd be so packed back there. There'd be 200 or 300 people back there. Everybody drinking, people passing out drugs, and other people on the other side of security begging to get in, offering money or drugs if you just let them in, right? I mean, it's insane. That's what that world's like. And there's a lot of real vicious people in that world too, really vicious people. And so I didn't want anything to do with Jesus. People would talk to me about the Bible, and I tell them, get lost. I don't want to hear that crap. It's all nonsense anyway. Somebody wrote that, and men wrote that. It's garbage. But when I heard my name called the second time, I guess being God, he let me know who it was, because I was absolutely 100% convinced that's who was behind me. And it terrified me multiple times greater than all the paranormal things that I've ever had in my life. I was so petrified that I couldn't even imagine being that afraid. I can't even express it. I was just so terrified. And I thought to myself afterwards, well, if you think demons are scary and things like that are scary, well, they're nothing compared to Jesus. And so I didn't even dare turn around and look Noreen, because I knew he was right behind me. I didn't turn around and look. I was too afraid. I was petrified. I thought I was going to hell. That's why I thought he was there. I thought, well, this is it. This is judgment. I'm gone. And that just terrified me even more. I was, shaking. And then he started speaking to me. And I got a vision, a clear vision, like it was like a real dream. And I saw my family standing up beside each other. It was like my mother, my father, my brother, and my two sisters standing right in front of me. And one by one of them disappeared, and then another would disappear, and another would disappear until they were gone. And I didn't understand what that meant until years later, and I'll tell you what happened. So he spoke to me. He told me. He wasn't harsh with me at all. Like, he wasn't judgmental or anything like that. And he calmed me down. He told me to calm down, and I calmed right down. And I felt like an amazing feeling of peace and love. It was awesome. And he told me some things. And the reason why he told me some things was just to prove to me that he was really there, because they were going to happen later, right? And also, he wasn't there very long either. Like, time really wasn't a factor to me at the moment. I was withdrawing, but maybe a minute, 2 tops, right? And then he was just gone. He wasn't there no more. But here's what I started doing as soon as he was gone. I started trying to make up reasons why that didn't just happen, right? I hallucinated. I was trying to convince myself it didn't happen. And then it dawned on me, I'm no longer sweating. I'm no longer sick. And I no longer have any cravings for drugs. He cured me instantly, bang, like that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was instantly cured of all that nonsense and never touched drugs again after that.
Wow.
And so, I look up on the wall, and there's my key on the hanger where I left it. It was there, right?
Oh,
so,
you weren't meant to leave. Wow.
Well, that's right.
That's something.
Absolutely right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened now in 206? In 206, what house were you in? The previous house or the one that you're in now, where the Ouija board was found?
It was the previous house.
Okay.
Yeah, we were in a townhouse there. Yeah.
All right.
So there's a little girl in the neighborhood. She was like 4 years old the very first time we met her, and she was always running around late at night. Her clothes were always dirty. She had a sister that was like, they would just take off and come back when they felt like it. And I said to my wife, I'm going down there to talk to her father, because this little girl has had the same clothes on for 2 weeks. Her hair hasn't been brushed. She's filthy, and she's running around at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And she come up to me. I was in the front garden one day, and this is the first time I met her. And she said, can I help, right? And I said, yeah, you can help. So I showed her what to do in the garden a little bit. And then she asked me if she could come in my house, and that really upset me. That really got me mad. So that's when I said, stay here. I knew her name was Sam. So I said, stay here, Sam. I'll be right back. So I got my wife, and I said, Sam, take me to your house. I want to talk to your mom and dad. So we went down there, and I was steaming mad, right? Because this little girl didn't know me. She's asking if she can come in my house. How scary is that? Right? Mm-hmm. And so I was really upset. And plus the fact that she was filthy and wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks. So I was pretty hot by the time I knocked on the door. I was ready to blast this father. And when the door opened, I see this tiny little frail woman. And she just looked so hopeless and kind of, it was just a pathetic sight. And not just all the anger I had just melted. And now all of a sudden I have compassion, because I realize something more is going on here. So I'll make a long story short. This woman, her mother, her name was Cindy. She had an inoperable brain tumor. And her husband had left years prior, 3 or 4 years prior, after, I guess when she was pregnant with Sam, he had left. So she was on her own. And her sister married a really wealthy man, and they had a mansion and a huge in-ground pool and 10 acres, just really, really wealthy. And they took Samantha a couple of times because Cindy was getting sicker and sicker. That's why she was running around with filthy clothes. This woman just couldn't do it. She was in really, really bad shape. And her sister took her 1 or 2 times. And one day my wife was working at the school. And one day her sister comes in with this little girl into the principal's office and said, "You deal with her. I got my own life to live." This is her aunt. Dumped her off at the school and left. And then refused to help. And so we asked her, we'll take care of Sam once in a while. We'll take her fishing or whatever if you want. We can, And she was so relieved and so happy. She was in tears, right? We had a long talk with her too and got to know each other. It's just a horrific story that I can't go into really. But so what happened was she was getting sicker and sicker, and so eventually Sam moved in with us. And the last thing I really heard Cindy say before she died was, "Will you please adopt Samantha? Because I see you love her and you're teaching her to be good just like your own kids." And that was very emotional. I don't cry, but tears were rolling because here's a woman about to die and saying that to you, right? So of course we'll take Samantha, And then by the time so she moved in permanently when she was about 5 or 6, almost permanently. She'd been there for a couple of weeks and then go home. And eventually she couldn't go home anymore. Her mom just couldn't do it. And then her mom went in the hospital and then she passed away.
So what was a Ouija board doing under her bed?
Yeah, so Samantha's, there's a part of the story I can't tell you because of legal reasons. But I'll give you a clue and you'll figure it out.
Wait a minute. What do you mean because of legal reasons?
I'll just give you a clue and you'll understand.
Okay.
Her father, the police were looking for him because he'd done things.
Oh.
Okay?
Okay.
You get it?
Got it. I got it.
Yeah, I can't really...
I got it.
Yeah, okay. And so it was just horrific. And Samantha, when little girls, things happen to them in their lives, they can become very rebellious. Or they can become withdrawn. There's a whole range of emotional damage that does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when she got older, it became more and more, she realized the gravity of what had happened. And she became really rebellious.
But what was the Ouija board doing under her bed?
Yeah. Her sister and her decided they wanted to contact their father.
But wait a minute, she was living with you.
Yeah, her sister had a different father. But she was raised with this other guy. The 2 girls, Cindy had 2 girls, one with a different man. So Samantha's father was the one the police were looking for, and her sister was living with her father. We tried to get her too because her father was fall down drunk. He was a complete alcoholic. Every time you ever saw this guy, he could barely speak, and he stank of booze all the time. So we tried to rescue her. And but Children's Aid wouldn't do it. I don't have anything good to say about them anyway. Because we would have raised her with love and care, and we would have taught her to be honest and all that stuff, as we were doing Samantha. And instead, her father was a drunk, and then she ended up being drunk, and it ruined her life. So they made this Ouija board, Noreen. They made
a Ouija board? How old were the girls at this time?
I'm gonna have to guess. I think Samantha was probably 11 or 12, and her sister was 14.
Oh, so they made a Ouija board.
They made one, a homemade Ouija board.
And you found it under the bed.
Yep, I found it under her bed. Because when she moved in with us, our oldest son had that bedroom. Our 2 younger sons shared a room, and we had the master. So we gave our bedroom up so the 2 boys could sleep in there, and then we were going to take their smaller room. And so all 3 of them ended up wanting to go into a master bedroom, so we let them. Samantha had her own room, and everybody else, my sons had shared the big room, and then we were in the little room. But so she was in there, and it was under her bed. I went in there to, clean up, and because she would get mad, she'd rip paper up and throw it out. You would see the whole entire floor covered with torn up pages out of books. She would just get that angry and just start tearing things up and trash in her room. And so when I was in there cleaning up, that's when I found it under her bed. And so I my wife and I sat her down and showed it to her and asked her, "What are you doing with this?" And she denied it was hers for a long time. She kept trying to deny it. Then we finally got her to admit that her and her sister made it. They wanted to contact Samantha's father and, let him have a piece of their mind.
So what were they doing with this Ouija board?
They were using it to try to get her to contact her. Her father hung himself, Maureen. I forgot to tell you that. He hung himself. And he did it he came to the house where Cindy was. He jumped over the fence. Cindy didn't realize he was there, and he hung himself in a tree in the backyard so the kids could see it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and just a vicious, I won't even go into what I'd like to say. But
so how long were they using this Ouija board before you discovered it?
She would never admit it, so I don't know how long they had it. So all she would admit is that yes, they made it and they were using it for that purpose, and she wouldn't admit anything else. Because I wanted to know, were you trying to call somebody else up or some other ghost, or what were you? I was asking her, what were you using this for? And all she would say is that they were trying to contact her father. That's it. But I think they were doing other things on it too.
All right, so then activity started happening in your home.
Yep.
Now, did the activity start before they were using the Ouija board, or did it increase after you found out?
One time, the day we moved into our house, our kitchen had a sliding glass door to the backyard, and then there was like a ravine and a creek and bulrushes back there. It's all wild and covered in. You can't walk back there. It's too thick. And so my wife went into the kitchen with a box because we were just moving in, and she screamed. So I came running, and there was an old man, not real old, but an older guy, a big guy, in the backyard. And it was dark outside. It was really dark. It was nighttime, and it was winter. And I saw him, and she saw him. You couldn't really make out facial features, but you could see there was a big guy standing out there, wearing a black coat and all black, and in our yard. Like he had to hop the fence. I don't know how he got through the bush. And so he took a couple of steps to one side out of our vision, and I swung the door open because I was going to throw him over the fence. And he was gone. And there was no tracks in the snow. So that was the first thing that happened. And there was no Ouija board at that time. So I don't know what that was about. But here's the thing, though. When we moved in, we saw occult symbols on the wall downstairs. I guess this woman had kids. They were teenagers. And so they had like the Pentagon on the wall. And they had all these different, devil horn figures.
Okay, so this was before the house that you built?
Yes.
Okay, so they were doing probably the Ouija board in the house as well before you got in there.
Yeah, whoever was there knew what they were doing, because those symbols they were not made up. They were precise. They were occult symbols on the wall. And it looked like they were done in like crayon. It was like wax. It wasn't paint or marker. It was like a crayon type, what I thought it was anyway.
Wow.
And so, I scrubbed that off. I never thought anything of it. It came off.
That was not good. That's probably why you had activity going on. All right, let's move along to the house that you built. You and your boys, you built this house. The house that you're in now, you built 15 years ago, and it was on. And the lot is very interesting. It was from the talk about that lot that you built the house on.
Okay. Well, we're about 200 yards up the street from Lake Simcoe. We're on the southern on Cooks Bay. It's this biggest it's famous. It's a world famous ice fishing lake. People come from all over the world to ice fish there, and it's phenomenal. And so we're just maybe 200 yards from the lake in the old section of town. And you saw the pictures of the house. Did you get those?
Oh yeah, I got one. Let's see.
Yeah,
this is the house.
See, there's trees. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. And our lot that we bought was an empty lot. It used to be a homestead there, years and years ago, probably in the mid 1800s. And it was pulled down, and then so the lot was overgrown. Like there was maple trees there that are, like 60 feet high, and there was ash trees and birch trees and long grass. It was just packed. And it was meant to be a throughway. They were going to make a road going from our street to the next street beside us, because our street is a dead end at one end. So if you want to access to go uptown, you have to drive down to the lake and go around a long way. So they were going to make an access road through there. But instead, what they did was they went to where it was a dead end, and they just made a curve there so you can turn and you can get out to another road to access the main street. So there was a homestead there that had been old, and it was torn down. And all that was left that you could see evidence that there was anything there was the well. The well was there, and somebody had cemented over the top of it, so there was still a well there. So,
okay, but it was interesting that you said that this area had all these little old cottages that people used to vacation from the 1920s.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was a cottage community up there. The town is a small town, but there, on the bay there where we built our house, there's still thousands of cottages there that people have converted to be all year-round homes. Some people have torn them down and built new. Some people have put additions like our neighbor did. Like he had a tiny cottage. It was just like a little tiny thing that you would just, you couldn't use it as a house, but he was living in it. And so they just finished putting a huge, digging out a basement, putting like a top floor in it. So that's what's typical around in the area. But people from Toronto, this was their cottage area, so they'd come on the weekends, and when they took summer vacation, they'd come up for the whole summer. So the entire area, the old section of town, there's still thousands of cottages here that have been weatherized, and so you can stay year round. Is there a detail you wanted me to mention about that?
Oh no, I was just interested in that area. It was very interesting about those cottages from the 20s that were all there. So what happened in, so in 2009 you were recovering from surgery.
Oh, yeah.
Now the image that you sent me of your operation, you said that you had the scar.
Yeah.
That was from your surgery, and you said that you had a near-death experience as well?
Yes. I did, yeah. You can show that picture if you want to. It's not necessary if it's trouble, but
I got it.
So I went here's what happened. I went and got my gallbladder up because I was having pancreas trouble, and they kept having to put an endoscope down, and they cut the duct and they put a little stent in, and the idea is that that little brass, it's just like a little brass ring to hold the stent, to hold the duct open, and then it'll heal. And then they take the stent out, and the idea is now the hole's bigger because it just healed around the stent. So now the pancreas will clear itself out better. That was the idea. It never worked though. So they had to go in and do that every few months or a year or whatever. They go in and change it to put another stent in. And then my specialist told me, like, you've got chronic pancreatitis, and it's just going to get worse and worse, and there's nothing we can do about it. So he said, I don't want to even go into the scope anymore. It's too dangerous. I could kill you. So he told me that if it got to be like a life and death situation, which he warned me it would eventually, then he would send me down to St. Mike's, which is where I was born, ironically, St. Mike's Hospital in Toronto, because there's two specialists down there that are the best in the world, and he would have them do whatever they had to do because he said he wouldn't chance it himself. And so during that surgery, they went in with they were going to do it with the scope, right? Just a couple little slices, and they get the scope and pull it out, so you don't have to have a big cut. But when they went in there, it was so distended that as soon as she touched it, it burst, right? And so now I'm internally bleeding, and so now they have to cut me to stop the bleeding. So she cut me right under my ribs, like directly under my ribs, which I wish she hadn't cut there because it took 2 years for that to heal. Every time you sit up, it would rip open because my ribs there was no play, right? Because right by your ribs, and so the muscle would tear. It was agonizing. And so she told me that because it had blown out like that and because there was a lot of bleeding, she didn't want to take a chance of cutting it out and causing any more damage. So she said, I just stitched the bottom of it closed, and she said, effectively, you don't have it anymore because it won't function. It can't function anymore. The bottom section's gone, right? So she said, it's just as good as if you'd had it out anyways. Well, about a year later, I woke up in the middle of the night sweating and just real bad pain. So I went to the hospital, and there was gallstones in that thing that would never work again. 2 of them.
Wow.
So they went to do this. Yeah, they went to do the surgery to get those out, and they nicked my bile duct. They didn't realize it. And so you saw the size of that scar. It was pretty big, right? The horizontal one.
Yeah.
Like it goes from one flank to the other. because he said when he opened me up, when she closed me up, like I guess the pancreas had moved because his muscles were growing and scar tissue had pushed it into a different area. And so he had to make a big cut just to find it, right? That's what he told me. So he had a huge cut just to find where it was. So wow. My bile duct was nicked. Nobody realized it. They stapled me shut. And then that night I woke up and it felt like someone had poured a bucket of warm water on me. I was dry, absolutely soaked. And my sheets, everything was soaked, right? And I felt odd. I felt like I was hovering above myself. It was just weird. It felt like I was above my own body. It was a weird sensation, like just a few inches, not like up at the ceiling or like before. And so these two young nurses were put in charge of night shift, and which was a big mistake. They weren't experienced, and they didn't recognize what was going on with me, right? If there had been an experienced nurse there, they would have called a surgeon right away because they would know what was going on, that I must have an infection and it must be bad, because that's how bad I was with the sweat. But they didn't realize it. They got in big trouble too, and I called the administration and told them it wasn't those nurses' fault. It wasn't their fault. Somebody should have been there. A nurse should have been there. Putting those two young nurses in there, it was not fair to them, and almost cost my life. So I didn't want them being blamed. It wasn't their fault. So they came in and they matter-of-factly talked to each other. They changed me, changed my bed, got me back in bed because it was soaked. It was all wet. 2 hours later, they come back in and they had to change it again. And that should have been an alarm for them right there, but they still didn't comprehend. So they changed me 4 times total overnight and didn't realize that, hey, what's going on here? So the next day, a nurse that was taking care of me a few days prior just dropped in to say hi. She's not my nurse that day. And she walked in, and I barely remember seeing her because I'm in bad shape now. And I feel like I'm dying. Like I realize what's going on, but don't even have the energy to speak. And I could just look at her, and she looked at me, and she was going to wave and say hi, and she spun around on her heels and ran out the door and started screaming at those two nurses and screaming at them. And then, call the surgeon right now, get moving. It was chaos. And very quickly, maybe a minute, I hear like a stampede running down the hall towards my room. And then in comes the surgeon and a bunch of nurses. They all came running in my room. He took one look at me, and his eyes went like that, that scared me. When I saw that he was, like, it terrorized him what he saw. So that's, like, I was near death. Wow. And he was petrified. And he started screaming at these nurses, do this, do that. And he was literally screaming just like the nurse was. Next thing I know, I'm on a stretcher with wheels, and they're running down the halls. They're actually running with me. Get out of the way, get out of the way. And security was in front pushing doors open and getting people out of the way. And they brought me to the CT scan, and I went in there and had the scan, and the doctor waited for it. And then, nope, they didn't see anything, so they brought me to this other one where they pump air into your stomach, and then they can see if you get a better look. I just had surgery, and they filled my stomach up with air, and that was agonizing. All the staples, blood was just dripping down. It was just painful. Didn't see anything. So then they ran me into the MRI. So now they got to take the staples out that I just had the day before, because you can't have anything metallic in the MRI. They'll get hot and burn and pop out, and it'll be a big mess. So they took the staples out, and I went in there and they did the MRI, and then they wheeled me back. And they were waiting for the doctor, and they just stopped me right where the control room was, and I could look in and I saw the monitors, and I saw a mass about, can you see that? About that big. Is that showing up?
Wow, yeah.
The size of an orange, I saw this black mass. It was right on top of my heart, and I knew that was infection, and I knew it was on top of my heart. And I knew I wasn't going to get out of that hospital alive. Not with a ball of infection like that over top of my heart. I knew I wasn't going to live, right? And so when they figured out where it was, they raced me back to CAT scan, because now they got to put a drain in. And they need to have a CAT scan so they can see where to put the hose, the drain tube. And so they put some freezing in, because they got to cut you. And then they get a metal tool about the size. You know what a syringe looks like? It's got a beveled end on one end, the needle part. It looked like that, only it was the size of a pencil. And it had a big steel knob on the end of it. And so the idea was they put the freezing in, they cut me, they put this thing in as far as it could go, and the freezing was defective. It didn't work. So I felt them cut me open, like there's no freezing at all. And so I go, oh, it didn't work. So the nurse says, I'm going to go run to the pharmacy and get another bottle of whatever that freezing stuff was. And he says, there's no time, sit down. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? No time. He's about to bang this thing into my abdomen with no freezing, right? And it goes in like that far. And he banged in with a hammer.
Wow.
So he had nurses laying on top of my legs. They had my arms strapped, because they had straps on the stretcher. They had my arms strapped. And my head, they had to put a towel on my head. And the two ends of the towel, nurses were sitting on. So I couldn't lift my head up. I couldn't move. And he banged this thing in.
Wow.
And so then he got a wire in there, and the wire goes to where they want the hose, and they thread the hose over the wire, and then they pull the wire out, pull the tool out. Now you're draining into a bottle, right? And immediately filled up like 3 or 4 bottles. They had to change them within a couple of minutes, right? And then it slowed down a bit, and they sent me back to my room, and then they got all kinds of IV and painkillers and stuff. Like, I was out of it. That's when I had that experience.
Wow.
So I remember what was happening before was I would go to sleep, and I'd wake up in the daytime, and then I'd wake up and it was pitch black outside. It felt like I was only sleeping for a minute or two, and so the whole day and into the night went by. And then it would be like 2 or 3 days like that. I'd wake up 2 or 3 days later. And so one time what happened was I thought I woke up, but I didn't. And I was in a real strange place. Have you ever seen like a lake when it has a lot of algae and it takes on like a greenish tone to it? Water? Yeah. It looked like that. It was like a light sage color. So, like what I was in was a light sage color. And it looked like mist. Everything was misty, so I couldn't really see a long distance. I could see maybe 20 feet in any direction, and then it was just misty and foggy, but it had this green tint to it. Everything had this green tint. And I felt the most amazing peace. And I felt like I was just floating too. I wasn't standing, I was like floating. And I felt I just felt an overwhelming sense of like tremendous love. Like somebody is here who loves you more than you could ever possibly imagine, more than any of your parents or your wife or whatever, way more.
Wow.
I didn't see anybody. Yeah, I didn't see anybody though. I didn't hear any voices. I saw nothing except for this green thing that I was in. And it was so peaceful, I wanted to stay there. And I was arguing with myself, well, you can't stay here. You have a wife and young kids at the time. You can't stay. But I wanted to stay. That's how amazing it was. It was so amazing that you're willing to say, okay, well, it's my time to die. I want to stay here. My family will get over it. Which sounds cruel now, but I wanted to stay. It was so beautiful and so wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
All right. Now, what happened in 2010? You said you had your most horrifying experience when two male entities woke you up.
Yeah. So I'm lying in bed. It's early in the morning. My wife's beside me sleeping. And I'm like, my eyes are closed, but I'm not quite sleeping. I feel something touch my forehead. And I thought my wife was goofing around or something, so I opened my eyes. And to my shock, I saw 2 men leaning over like this out of my wall. And one guy had something in his hand. It looked like black plastic, but it had a circle of little blue lights around it, looked like little blue LED lights. And then the middle, a bigger one, right in the middle. So it looked like one of those cameras that you use in ghost hunting. You know the ones I mean, Lorraine? They're either red or infrared.
Oh, yeah.
Right, you know those cameras?
Oh,
but this
God.
One had blue.
Yeah, I know. Oh, gosh, I know the name of them. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly what it looked like. And I could just see the end of it. I couldn't really see this side because it was right on my head. And then I couldn't move. I could not move. Like I could move my eyes around, and if I tried really, really hard, I could sort of turn my head just ever so slightly, a little bit. And these guys are looking down at me with this thing on my head, and I could see like behind them, and it looked like a stairway. It was a staircase up behind them, and it looked like all metal. It was all metal, and the staircase was maybe I guess it had to be the area was maybe 5 feet wide, because these 2 grown men are leaning over my headboard like this, side by side. And I could see up these stairs. There's maybe 10 stairs. And then up on the top, everything had like a red tint to it, like a red glow. Like they had red light somewhere that was shining out of this, whatever it was. And then I could see a wall up here, but it was round and it curved to the right, so I couldn't see anywhere else. So there were stairs behind them, metal stairs.
Oh my God, in your bedroom?
In the wall. This was in the wall. Yeah.
Oh my! So was the ceiling of your room like opened up where you could see beyond the ceiling?
No, it was just on my wall.
Oh my God!
There was no opening out. If you would imagine, look at your wall and cut out a rectangle, maybe 5 feet by maybe 5 feet square.
Mm-hmm.
That's how big the opening was. That's how big it was.
Is that in this house that you're in now?
Yes, I'm in the room. I'm in the room right now where that happened. It happened just on this wall right here.
Wow.
Right there. Because my bed was this way. And so I was looking up like this, because I was laying on my back. So I was looking up like this at them, right? And I could see them, and I could see behind them. And so he's touching me with this thing, and they're both looking down at me, and they had this confused look on their faces. And years ago, I can't even remember any details of it. I thought it was a dream, but I had a dream that I had a chip in me. And it was a dream. I never took it as anything other than a dream. So I don't remember any details or anything. I just had this thing where I felt I had a chip implanted. And so when I became, well, I should have told you this. The day after that happened to me with in the cottage.
Yeah.
I went home the next day and I told my wife, set up a meeting with the band, emergency meeting, and I quit the band the next morning. I quit. That's how powerful this experience was.
Wow.
And the reason, though, my family was disappearing out at a time is showing me what order they were going to die in.
Wait a minute. Who Jesus?
Yes.
Wait a minute. So when Jesus appeared to you, he was showing you your family?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't see him, Lauren. He was behind me, and I didn't dare look back to look at him. I was too afraid. But he put an image in my mind, like it was a realistic image. Like it wasn't standing right in front of me. It was an image in my mind. And I saw my family standing, like there was my mom, my dad, my brother, and my 2 sisters standing beside each other in a row. And then one of them disappeared, and it was my brother. He disappeared first, right? And then my mother disappeared, and then my dad disappeared. And that's the order that they all died in. My brother died when he was 45 from cancer. My mother died a couple of years later, and my dad died a few years after that. It was the exact same order. My 2 sisters are still alive. So
he didn't show you your 2 sisters?
They're still alive. So they didn't. I know which one's going to go next. Right? I won't tell them. I'm not going to tell them, but I know which one's going to go next. Right?
God, that's so weird. I never heard anything like that before.
Yeah, and he told me things that were going to come true. He said he only showed me these things to prove that it was him that did this and not some kind of a demonic spirit trying to trick me, because demonic spirits, they can't see the end from the beginning. In other words, they can't predict the future. They can do to a certain extent, but like he was giving me, precise detail.
Can you share those? Can you share that?
Some of the things he told me?
Yeah, that came true?
Yeah. So we were trying to think of what year it was that
Is there a dog in there with you?
Yeah, can you hear her snoring?
Oh yeah.
So he told us, or he told me that we were going to move to a new place, and shortly. I don't remember the exact words, but I know what he told me. That we were going to move out of the house we were into a new place, and it was going to be better, like a new start. Is what he told me. And so at the time, I quit the band. Now I got no income now because that's what my income was. And my wife wasn't working. We were going to have kids, and she was going to be a stay-at-home mom. We had it all planned out. And so when he told us that, I told my wife what happened. I told her the whole thing, and I said, I can't see us getting it. And because he said it was going to happen fast, right? It's going to happen quickly. And I said, I can't see that coming true because we can't afford it. Like, it's going to take us, first of all, I had to get a job. And then we had to save up enough money for first and last month's rent and for, other things you need when you move. So, we're looking at least a year, right? I believed that we were going to move, but the part I couldn't see was it wasn't going to happen quickly. Well, a couple of days later, the phone rings, and I pick it up, and someone's on the line, ask for me, and I said, yeah, this is me. She starts saying, well, the place you applied for has come vacant, so you can move in. And I didn't know what she was talking about because I hadn't applied anywhere, right, to live anywhere. And so I said, what are you talking about? And she said again, is this your name? And yeah, that's my name. And do you live at this address? Yes. But I did not apply to go move somewhere. Like it was a rental place is what it was. It's a brand new townhouse is what it was. And so she said, well, according to the papers here, you applied, but you were told there was a 5-year waiting list because there was people wanting to get into these townhouses, right? They had just been built. And my parents lived in this town at that time, and we wanted to move up to this town to be around my parents. So I didn't know what to tell this woman. I kept saying, like, I did not apply for this place. And she told me, well, go talk to your wife and then get back to me. Maybe your wife applied. So I got her number, and no, my wife didn't apply. So what happened was my mother had applied and didn't tell us. Right? She didn't tell us because she first of all, they told her it was a 5-year waiting list. And so she didn't want to tell us. She didn't want to make us, get excited for nothing. But so we got that place and we moved in like a week later.
So you were told that you were going to get this place. Okay, yeah. Why do you think it was Jesus that was contacting you?
As soon as I heard my name the second time, that information became just known. I don't know if you put it
Jack,
in my mind
this happened.
but Jack, no doubt in my mind at all. Pardon me?
Jack.
Yeah.
People have heard their names before, and it wasn't Jesus.
Right. And I think the reason why, I was cured. I was in withdrawal. I was going to die. I'm certain I wouldn't have lived through then. And I was instantly cured of that. Withdrawal, my drug addiction, gone.
Okay.
So demons don't do that, right? They don't heal you.
But wait a minute. I've also heard of stories where people have been in contact with, and I'm not crazy, with aliens. With aliens. Yeah, and you think if you had a chip, then you might have been in contact not knowingly with aliens. And wait a minute, this sounds crazy, but maybe an alien was contacting you or made a visit to you for some reason. And maybe they're the ones that cured you and told you those things, because they can do that. But most of the times what I heard is that when they do contact you, they don't want you to remember it. So they do something to your mind so you don't remember the events.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, so my take on aliens is they're fallen angels. That's what they are. That's my opinion. There's biblical corroboration for that too. In the Bible, it tells a story about a time when alien life forms, it doesn't use those terms, but it said men's heart will fail them for the things they see coming out of the heavens, coming out of the skies onto the earth. Something terrifying will happen. It will be so scary that men's hearts will fail them. That's a scripture, right? And then there's other scriptures like Ezekiel's wheel. Have you heard of that, Noreen?
What's that, honey?
Ezekiel's wheel.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Right. So it's a description of a flying craft in the book of Ezekiel. And it describes a wheel within a wheel spinning around, and the Lord sitting in the middle of it, and this thing would go up to one side, to another side, and down and up like this, just like you see some of these videos of UFOs do, like making these right angle turns and stops. That's what's described. If you look at that scripture, Ezekiel, you'll read that detail. So I'm of the firm mind that, in my opinion, and then there's other corroborating books like Enoch, the book of Enoch, and you got to be careful when you're using references that are not in scripture. But Jesus mentioned that book in one of the scriptures, and so that legitimized it for me, right? Because he I can't remember the exact scripture, but he referred to Ezekiel. Is it not said in Enoch? Sorry, is it not said this and this and this? So he referred to that book, and he corroborated by saying, is it not said? So whatever he was talking about was something that was true. So I started trusting that book at that time.
So why do you think at this visitation that you had that he was showing you who was going to die in your family?
Yeah,
in order.
Why? The reason he did that was to let me know that he is God, because only God can know these things. Well, that's what is in my mind, right? He did that, and he told me about the house, and he told me. I already told.
Did he tell you when you were gonna die?
No.
So everybody else but you.
He told me I was not gonna die. I wasn't. And here's how that works. Have you heard the term the rapture?
I've heard that term, yes.
Okay, it's a biblical term. And what it is at the end time, all the Christian people will be raptured right before the devil takes over, right before Satan takes over. He takes us out of the earth and into heaven for 7 years, because that's how long satanic rule will be on earth, 7 years. This is well known within Christian circle. Everybody knows about rapture. People argue about when it's going to happen, but the fact of the matter is it's called rapture. That's this Latin term for being lifted up and away. And just like Noah's Ark, Noah was lifted above the flood and protected. He didn't go through the flood, right? So this time the idea is Jesus is the ark, not that big boat, but Jesus is the ark that's going to lift us up out of the earth and get us away from the chaos that's going to happen when Satan's. This is Christian. I'm not pushing it on anybody. This is just what Christians believe, right? And so you get raptured out, right? And now sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, so that's what that term is. I can't even remember why we started on that line of discussion. Were you asking me something?
No, I'm listening to you. I'm making my own comments.
So I believe they're fallen angels. Like, there's demons are a different creature. They're not fallen angels and demons are separate things. Biblically speaking, a demon. If you read Genesis 6, it talks about the fallen rebellious angels having hybrid children with human women, which was absolutely forbidden. And they started a race of hybrids. It's in Genesis 6 if anybody wants to check it out. And actually, the original sin, a lot of people don't know this, but if you read the scripture, what that happened there was Satan and Adam impregnated Eve together, and they had twins. And that's a scientific reality. I can't remember the term. You can look it up. A woman can be impregnated by two different men and have twins. Right? You understand what I'm saying?
No.
So
I never heard that. I know animals can.
I didn't hear it either until I started trying to look and find out what that sin was. I wanted to know what it was. Why was it so? What was so bad about it that he had to kick them out, and now we have to go through all this nonsense, all the horrors of life, right? Well, what happens is they had Satan talked them into having a threesome, basically is what it was. And they had no concept of sexual depravity at the time, right? They didn't know it wasn't not a thing to do, but they were warned to stay away from him. They could go anywhere they wanted in this garden except for that one spot. They were told, don't go near there, don't touch it. If you do that, you'll die. Because they were immortal, right? They were built immortal, created to live forever. But he told them, if you went there, then you're going to lose your immortality. And that's what happened. They got kicked out and lost their immortality. So they had, Cain was Satan's seed. It's in Genesis 3. If anybody wants to read that, you'll see it there. And Abel was Adam's son. She had twins, right? That was what the original sin was. Satan was always trying to start. He wants to copy God. He wants to be God. That's what he said. And that's why he got kicked out. So he's trying to start his own race that will worship him as God, right? And he thought he could create a race. Now these hybrids are described as giants in Genesis 6. They're described as giants. There's measurements given in cubits, Egyptian cubits. So Goliath was one of them, and he was about 12 feet tall. And in the Bible, there's another one mentioned called King of Bashan. He was 15 feet tall. And there was even taller ones and bigger ones. And so Satan wanted to create this race so he could be worshipped like God is worshipped. And he created these big, strong hybrids to kill humans, right? And that's why God flooded the world, because these things had spread out over a couple thousand years all over the planet, and they were killing all the humans and ravaging food. Like they're eating all the resources, so people were starving because these giants would eat a lot. And that's what happened after the Exodus. When they were 40 years around Mount Sinai, they were cleaning out all these, they call them Nephilim, Noreen, that's the name of these giants, they're called Nephilim.
Yes.
And they had created cities all around this area, all in Gaza Strip, Hebron, Canaan, which is Israel. They had these huge cities. And so God had flooded the earth to kill all the giants. And then they started again. They started again after the flood. And all this is in the Bible. It's all scriptural. I'm not making this up.
Okay.
A lot of Christians don't really read the whole book or don't comprehend certain things, and they take certain things as myth when they're actually reality, because they're finding skeletons of giants 15, 16 feet tall. One was found in India that was 26 feet tall. You can go into your Google and type in giant skeletons North America, and you'll see hundreds and hundreds of actual newspaper articles describing, some farmer found 7 bodies that were 9 feet tall, or, things like that. You'll see hundreds and hundreds of actual newspaper articles. And you can go into the archives of the actual papers, and you'll see they're legitimate. They're not fake. So these creatures were here. They're finding their bones. So after the flood, they started the program again. Now, here's the thing. I'll quickly describe this because it's relevant. With each passing generation, our genome, our DNA degrades. It degrades, it breaks down. With every generation, we lose DNA information. That's why we're more susceptible to different diseases than we used to be. Like heart attacks are through the roof. Like, I don't know, 60 years ago, you hardly had heart attacks. Now everybody knows somebody who's had a heart attack. Cancers, that's exploded, right? Because our genetic information to fight those things off is degraded. We're not able to fight them off anymore.
Well, you know what? I had heard a long time ago that our DNA had changed. We used to live to be 200 years old, even older, but our DNA was changed.
Yeah, the atmosphere of the earth was changed too. And if people want to get into this, go on Google and type in pre-flood life, and you'll see scientific articles. Like there's a beaver that's 12 feet long. There's a moose that's 23 feet tall at the shoulders. There's clams that are 6 feet wide. This is all legitimate. People can go look it up. So before the flood, we had a completely different atmosphere. And it was an atmosphere that was a lot more rich in oxygen. Scientists have proven all this. And so things grew bigger and lived longer, right? And when the flood happened, it changed, because that flood came up from under the earth, like there was water under the earth. There's an ocean under the earth. And you'll see a seam. If you ever look at a globe, you'll see a seam all the way around the globe, like where the earth split open. And the Bible says that he busted out the fountains of the deep, and it shot up. And there's scientists that think that the moon has all those crater-looking things on it.
Yeah.
But people are always baffled because they don't look like typical craters. It looks like it's, if you boil pudding or something, it looks all bubbly and has craters and stuff in it. Mm-hmm. They think that when the earth spread open, it shot right so far up, it broke through the atmosphere, and it superheated up the moon, all that material, like the huge rocks, boulders, whatever came out of there. It shot up into space. It was so powerful of a jet because the earth cracked wide open. And like I said, you can see the seam. It goes all the way around the world, right? It cracked. And people theorized, scientifically corroborated that the moon boiled. It's not a scientific fact, but there's models that work for that. And then the earth, it all came down and it flooded. The entire earth was flooded. It rained also, but most of the water came from up, from the ground. And that's what's in our oceans today. That's where the water went. When it receded, it settled down into where we see the oceans. So that's what, anybody can look that up. So that changed the atmosphere. I guess it busted open our atmosphere because the Bible describes like a protective shell around the earth. And from what people can gather, it was a thin layer of ice. And when we're talking maybe 5 feet thick all around the globe, that kept dangerous radiation of the sun out. People can get really badly burned now, but back then you couldn't. And the atmosphere was completely different. And that broke open, and it changed our atmosphere. We lost a lot of oxygen, our atmosphere, and then we started living shorter and shorter life periods. And our DNA does degrade, right? Mm-hmm. So here's something people would be interested in. So these angels came and they made hybrid children with women. Well, that's what they're doing now. When people get abducted, what are they after? Eggs and sperm, right?
I don't know that. Because I've had several shows with abducted people that have been abducted, and a lot of times they don't remember. It's not for them to remember what happened to them. Now, some people have been hypnotized to bring it all back, but the last show I just did, he was abducted. But
I know, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that guy's story before too. That's an amazing story.
Yeah, but he still has the chip in him. And he was abducted, but he doesn't remember. And I forgot to ask him if he ever got hypnotized, but I don't think he did. So
if he tells you, if you have him on again, he'll probably tell you the part of the story he didn't tell you, where he remembers being on the craft and seeing alien beings.
Yeah, he described them, but I couldn't finish the show with him. We didn't have enough time. He had another show to go to, and we didn't finish with all the images that he had sent me either. He wants to come back.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
He wants to come back. We didn't finish. We really didn't finish, but I would love for him to go get hypnotized and find out.
Me too. That would be awesome.
And he see. Anyway, I'm getting choked up here. Hey, you know what? Can we? I really would like you to talk about what happened to you, and the pilgrims. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'll say what happened.
I want you to tell. It's getting late, so I want you to tell them about this.
Okay, I'll get through that. So if this was during the day, it was early in the morning. I think it was summer. I'm pretty sure it was summer. But my wife and my son went shopping or something. They left the house, so I was in bed alone. I was recovering from a surgery. I didn't talk about that iron thing, but we can do that some other time because this story is way better. I think you'll agree. So I had that feeling came over me again, that terrified, scary feeling. People get that sometimes at nighttime when they're sleeping, like they all of a sudden feel like something's in the room and they get a little afraid. That kind of a feeling. But this was really magnified. It was wicked, wicked. I opened my eyes, and I looked to the left to where my window is, which is right there, and there's two people standing there. And I can't move again. It's like, what do they call that? I forget the term for it, when you're paralyzed and you can't move and you see things. I can't remember the term. But
I know.
So I couldn't move. I could turn my head slightly and my eyes could move, just like the other time there. And there was a woman there, and she looked like a witch. Like, she just looked like a witch. She had like a, what do they call it?
I got to show them the picture. Okay, so here's the wall. Here's the wall, and you're sitting behind that wall. That's
the wall's on the opposite side for me. It's over this way.
Okay, and there's the door.
I don't want to move my laptop in case.
No. And then let's see. This is where the entities. There's the wall with the window. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
No, you won't see it. And and there's the wall. Okay, so, oh my goodness. Okay, so let's see. Do you want me to show them as you're talking about the image over the bed?
Yeah, sure. You can show whenever you feel.
Okay.
You want to.
All right. Go ahead.
So they look like they could have stepped right off the Mayflower. They were like, they looked like that. The woman looked like, to me, I thought she looked like a witch. Her skin was like a gray color. Like she just rolled through coal or something. Her skin was all gray. Her arms were exposed maybe from just below the elbow down. And she had like a white blouse type thing on, and then she had like a coat on, like a, what do they call those? Petticoats under the puffy sleeve type things. And then a skirt that went, I didn't see their feet, so I don't know how far down it went, but it just looked like she could have walked right off the Mayflower. That kind of dress. And she had long black hair, and her face and everything that was exposed to her skin was like gray. It was a gray color. It was freaky. And the guy here looked like he was sort of like a middle-aged, and he was like he was heavy, and he was wearing, he had like a white shirt on, and he had one of those hats that are really, really tall. I forget what they call them. Purist? I can't remember. They had a buckle on it.
They were, yeah. I think they just called them felt hats.
Yeah, they were like a felt hat. But this one looked like it wasn't. This guy here looked like he would have been wealthy in the day. He wasn't wearing like ragged stuff. He was wearing looked like really expensive things. But his hat was like it was kind of, witches' hats are really tall and pointy. It wasn't pointy, but it was really tall. It had a flat top. It was really tall. It had a buckle on the front and a brim around the end. And so they were standing. He was to the. As I'm looking out the window and they're facing me, they only looked at me for maybe 3 or 4 seconds. They both looked right at me, and then they turned their heads that way. They turned their heads to the left, and they were looking down towards the floor. And I was absolutely 100%, no shadow of a doubt, certain that there's a wicked, very powerful demonic being on the floor at the other side of my footboard, which I can't see because there's a dresser there, so I couldn't see it. But somehow, some way, I knew it was there, and that's what was the most wicked area. Like that area of the room there was what terrified me the most. It was just something really strong and really evil and wicked was on the floor right there. And they were looking at that. And it seemed to me that they were getting instructions because they were sort of making gestures as if somebody was telling them something to do. And then she takes out this bottle. It's a glass bottle. And it looked like one of those short Coke bottles, the green ones. It looked like that. Miniature Coke bottle. It was green.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah. So it looked like. And then she lifted her arm up, and this was impossible because I would be maybe the same height as her. I'm 5'7", so I'm not giant. And she lifted her arm up and put this thing through the ceiling. And when her hand came down, it was gone. So I don't know if her arm stretched or how she did that, but she put it right through the ceiling, right above where she was standing, and into the attic.
Wow.
I've always wanted to go up there and look, but we have a really, it's just full of trusses, and it's hard to get around up there, and there's like 2 feet of insulation, blown insulation in there. I'm going to go up there and look sometime. My curiosity is going to get me the best of me, but it'd be very difficult to get there to see. And I don't know. I tried to find out if there was any relevance to green color or green glass bottles in occult, and I couldn't find anything. So I don't know why. I don't know what that was about. If anybody here knows, I mean, write in the comments. I'd love to learn. Right.
So all these events happen when you're sleeping.
These 2 in my room did. Yeah. Oh, and the one in the window, I actually got the strength, or in my wall, to lift my arm up, and it took everything I had, and I pushed his hand up and away like that.
Oh
he could have very easily held his hand there because I could barely move. But in my mind, I thought, if I'm making an effort to push him away, he has to obey that effort somehow. Am I making sense? Because he could have easily overpowered me. I was just barely able to move my hand, and it took the very least pressure to push his hand away from my head. And when I pushed it away, they went in the wall shut and they were gone. And then there was a dim. I got like a popcorn ceiling. You spray that stuff on your ceiling, and there was a red glint on my ceiling. You could barely see it, but it lasted for like maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour, until it faded right out. And that was there for at least that amount of time after they left.
What a description of these 2 entities. I've never heard anything like that before.
And it just looked like regular men. They had black hair. They looked like they were wearing black leather jackets, which was really odd to me. Why would they be wearing that? Right? But then again, they came through my walls.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the story. I mean,
that is really. And you never saw them again. You never saw them again.
No, they never came again.
And were you awake or were you dreaming this?
I was awake. I was
You
wide
were awake.
awake.
Did you try to talk to them?
I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk.
Oh, you were paralyzed.
Yeah,
okay.
I wanted to wake my
Like
wife
sleep
was with me
paralysis.
for the one on the wall. She was beside me, and I wanted to wake her up, but I couldn't move and I couldn't talk. She slept right through it. Right. So no, I haven't seen them again.
Yeah, I don't think they were shadow men. I mean, they look like pilgrims.
You said real people. Like when I pushed that thing away, I felt it.
You felt it?
I felt the object.
Oh my God.
I was awake for both those incidences. I was wide awake. I just couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, I think they call it.
Yes, I was just sleep paralysis. But you were
wide awake.
Oh my God, I've never heard a description like that before.
Yeah. And the last thing that happened, I'll tell you briefly, was that thing that flew off my end table. If you want me to tell you that, it'll take a minute.
Okay.
All right, so I collect die casts, like my grandfather got me into it, and I restore them for people, and I customize them. It's crazy. Men have toys, and they love them. And so I bought this vintage, it looks like a wheel, a tire, but it's really a case that holds these die cast Hot Wheel cars. And I had all of the slots all filled, plus an extra car in each one. So it was heavy. That thing weighed about 5 pounds. And I had it on my end table, which I don't think you can see behind me here. But I had it there, and it was pushed up against the back wall. And my wife and I were in bed here reading. And that thing came zooming off my night table and landed about 7 feet away on the floor, that way. And we were both stunned. Like, we could not believe what just happened. That's the last thing that happened in this room. And that was, that was a few years back. That was probably like 5 years ago. Nothing's happened. I mean, I think I see things, but I'm not sure. Peeking in every once in a while on my door at nighttime when it's black, it looks like something goes like that real quick and then goes back out. But I can't be sure. right? Because it's dark. But it looks like something that's blacker than the darkness of my room, darker than dark. If that makes sense.
What?
It just goes like that and takes a look in my room and then moves the head back real quickly. I see that from time to time. And my son saw somebody walk through the kitchen last week, and he never talks about stuff like that. He hates it, right? He hates it, but it terrified him. He saw someone walk in the kitchen. He thought it was me, and he went in there, and there was nobody in there. I was in my room.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you know, you don't know what was on that property. You don't know prior to the 1920s, because obviously they were using that land because they built the cottages on there in the 20s. So before it was used, and it could have been farmland. Who knows what was going on that property? Who knows what went on
here? Yeah, because how do you explain a new house? This thing, like, how does that happen? Right?
Oh well, it happens. It happens even to new homes. It happens. A lot of times too that the person is haunted also.
Yeah. So there's a house across the street that it's a rental, and people move in on it. The longest we saw somebody there was 3 months. And there's been like a slew of people in and out of there, and people say that there's spirits in there that terrify people.
Oh.
So I don't know if there's a connection there or not, but I know that people move in and out of there all the time. So
you're on some kind of land. Do you know if that's Indian territory over there?
It used to be many years ago, and I was adopted, so my parents were born in England, but I'm part Cherokee. My grandmother was Cherokee, and my grandfather was Scottish.
So the land that you're on was Indian territory?
It was, and it was probably Ojibwe. Okay. That's who was around the area.
So that explains it right there. That explains it right there.
Yeah, very well could, yeah. That's one of the considerations that I think it could be, you know. I mean, I don't believe in deceased people as ghosts. Can you imagine having to be stuck in that kind of situation where you're trapped and you don't know where you are, you're confused? And some people say there's children that are lost and there's these big scary creatures chasing around and scaring them. If that's what the afterlife is like, I don't want it.
I never heard that. I never heard that.
Well, you never heard like people say they see little girls, lost little spirits and little girls in the houses or anything? I've heard a lot of people say that. And
you mean haunting a house?
Yeah, haunting a house.
Haunting a house.
Yeah, haunting a house, yeah.
No, I haven't.
If those are actually ghosts, and that's the situation they're in, I mean, that doesn't seem like a progression. You would think that after you die, your life will get much better and amazing, but that seems to be a de-evolution to me. Like, if you're in a situation where you're trapped in an environment, if that's the afterlife, then I don't want it.
Gee, it's too bad that event that you had where you were shown that the progression of the death of your family, that you weren't shown about the afterlife. That would have been nice.
Even when I had that experience in the hospital, nothing was explained. Nothing. I heard nobody speak. It was just I was in this place. So yeah, it's a mystery, that's for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. Oh gosh, Jack. Well, your novel that you typed, I can't believe you typed that, was really intense, and it really went into a lot of detail on your hauntings. And you really should write a book, because what you wrote was amazing.
I'm seriously considering it.
And you should.
And I've left out times. You can't tell the whole story.
No.
You know, I don't take days.
Oh no! Because like I said, if I had printed that out, we could have published it as a book.
You know what, Noreen? I'll keep you updated, because I'm going to start a manuscript, and I'll keep you updated. I'll send them to you. You know, if I get like 30 pages, 10 pages together, I'll send you, and you can go over it.
Okay.
I love your opinion. You know I love you. You're awesome. You're the best. You're the absolute best at this.
Thanks. Amazing. Oh, thanks. We've known each other for many years. You've been, I think, since back from 2006, maybe, way back then.
You were doing investigations at the time.
Yeah.
With is it Tim?
Tim, yeah, that was 206. Yeah, 206.
Yeah, from the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Jack. Thanks so much.
I wish you would have got a feather boa, though. You know, that was so classic.
Oh, God. Right? I got rid of those. I gave them.
That was awesome. I love those.
Oh, I just went through a phase, that's all.
Yeah, that was so cool. That was like your signature style.
Oh, right? Gosh.
I love it.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for sharing your story with us. We loved you. It was great to finally meet you.
Yeah, same here, Noreen.
Thanks so much, and really, you should consider writing a book. You really should.
I'm going to. My mind's actually made up now. I am going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit down and do that. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, absolutely should. Okay, Jack, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. We enjoyed you. And be safe out there. And if you have any experiences where you think you've been abducted, please let me know. Okay.
Yeah, well, you'll be the first. I promise.
Thanks, Jack. Good night, honey. Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Noreen.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Oh, gosh. Let's see. Okay, well, everybody, it was nice to finally meet Jack after all these years. I've known him since 2006 when I was ghost hunting with Tim Wood on Live Sci-Fi. And I have a couple of you have still following me from those days as well. And I want to thank my mods so much. Renee, Chippeteri, Sweet Annie was here tonight. Thanks and Crystal Triplet. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. You know, Royce is having so many problems with his iPhone, with his computer. He's really having issues, and the internet. So until he gets that all straightened out, he won't be back with us for a while. This has been going on for a long time, and there's a long story to it, and it's not his fault. So we just have to wait till he can come back. He sent me a picture that he had captured in his kitchen. The scariest thing I ever saw. It was a big, tall, black entity that was standing in his kitchen. And I'm dying for him to come back so we can do that show where the ghost pictures that he has, and then he takes images off of my show, and then he does this thing with them, and he picks out all the ghosts that are shown on the live show. Anyway, I just have to wait. So anyway, thanks to the mods for helping me out tonight, and please everybody thank them as well. Let me do some shout outs. Oh, hey, you know what? Oh my God. I got some good shows coming up. On the 20th, I'm doing a show on the Valeska murder house. Now, I did one maybe 5 years ago with Dr. Epperly. He is the expert on the Valeska house. For 40 years, he's been doing research on the Valeska house, and he's written a book. Now he's writing a second book, and he has a documentary coming out. There's new information on that case and who the murderer is. So he's going to come on the show on the 20th, and I'm really excited about that. He's really awesome. He's highly intelligent. On September 20th, I have a guest coming. He's a psychic and a remote viewer. So we're going to do, I'm thinking about doing missing persons and unsolved mysteries, missing persons, and missing from national forests. And then on the 24th, I have another guest coming, and it's going to be Phantom Messages, where you get phone calls. I've gotten them myself. Text messaging, and anyway, it's Phantom Messaging. He wrote a book with William Hall. They wrote this book together, and this kid he's also a part of the paranormal team, Nesper. It was the paranormal team that Ed and Lorraine Warren had started, and the Johnson brothers, Keith and Carl Johnson. They were on that paranormal team with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they also had trained with them. And now Nesper has been taken over by Tony Sparra, the nephew. So, then October 8th, guess who I have? I am so excited. Do you remember Betty and Barney Hill that were abducted. It was an alien abduction. It was in the 1950s. Well, the niece is coming on my show, and she has all the evidence and the story of Benny and Betty Hill, their abduction, and she has all the information on it. I love that story. So she's coming on. I'm really excited. That's October 8th. And then on October 22nd, Rainbow's coming back. And I forget, we did the show a couple of weeks ago with her. She was attacked. Something happened. Anyway, it's on witches. So she's coming back, and we're going to do a show on witches. Let's see. Oh, and then on November, I have a fella coming in. He is a reincarnate of a, he wrote a book on reincarnation, the sole survivor of World War II. And so he's coming on the show in November. And then let's see what else. Oh, and then I have a show scheduled with Dave Spinks. We're going to do a show on, he wants to do a show on Ghosts of Christmas. So that'll be December 17th. So that's what I have so far. And I'm really looking forward to those shows. So everybody, I want to thank you all so much for being here. Let me do some shout outs. Hold on for a second. All right, let me do some shout outs. I'll have to pick you out from the chat that's moving. I know Carl White, Tall Cross, and of course our mods, Unique Annie, Crystal Triplet, Renee McDowell, and Chippa Terry. And then, okay, so let's do some, Anita Ackerman, B3 Airspace. Hi, guys. Exo Blix 373, Lolly Tubi, Dust Bunny, Meta Kitty 33, Leonora Martinez, Jordan Perkins, Panada Samurai. Who else wants a shout out? Mark Burchett. Hey Mark, you have a Sasquatch story? Send me an email to ParanormalZoneTV@gmail.com. ParanormalZoneTV@gmail.com. Thayer, Tammy Rogers, Lori Miller, I am Alpha. Oh, thank you, I am Alpha. You're welcome, honey. Yes, group hugs, Annie. Group hugs, Unique Annie. There's Tall Cross. Hi, honey. Ginger Hobby. Tracy Clark. The Haglin. Anybody else? If anybody's watching that you're not in the chat room, if you would subscribe to my channel, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Everyone, please be safe out there. Pray for those who are losing their battle with the coronavirus. Pray for them. Keep them in your prayers. So I'm going to go. I don't see anybody else. That's my phone talking. I don't know why it's talking. Anybody else want to shout out? Okay, I'm going to go. Everybody be safe, huh? Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming here when I have my live shows. I'll be putting up the next live event on the front page of the channel, and you can always, when I check periodically and when the event is made, all you have to do is click on it and you'll get a show reminder. So everybody, thanks so much. Love you guys. Group hug. Oh, Joan of Arc. Okay, everybody, I'm going to go now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know I do. I love you guys. I love seeing you here every week. And yes, send your prayers to Royce that this thing gets all straightened out, as for his health as well. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks, okay? Thank you. Good night, everybody. I love you. Good night.